You're listening to the Breezy Moms podcast on Digital Stream Radio.
Hey everyone, you're listening to the Breezy Moms podcast, a weekly show that chronicles the adventures of motherhood. I'm Candace. Now let's start the show. Hey guys.
Hey.
How are you?
What's going on, Miss Candace?
I'm good. I'm cold, but I'm good.
Welcome back to a second episode this week of the Breezy Moms podcast.
Right.
Because I totally screwed up last Thursday's episode.
That's okay. They don't know because it's not posted anywhere.
Oh, I know, but
you just
I know.
Gotta let it go.
And I'm distraught about it.
No, don't be distraught about it. This is the Breezy Moms podcast, okay?
That's right. Well,
we're just being breezy about it so we don't think about it too much and make ourselves upset.
I'm just all over the place.
Just gotta let it go. Brush it off. Shake it off.
It's crazy, though. It's crazy how everything just happens, right?
It's okay.
So how are you, my dear Candace?
We're here, so it's Saturday instead of Thursday, and we're doing I want to call it a bonus episode.
But it's really
But it's really episode 49, and that's cool. And so if you weren't listening live, then you don't know that we did an episode with my cousin Skylar, who's an actress in New York City, and a glitch happened and we lost the whole recording. So she will be back in the next couple weeks for us to redo it. And I told her we'll just call it a rehearsal. She's an actress. She knows how that goes.
That's right.
So we're here. We're doing another episode.
The
it's
makeup.
Like 49 part deux.
Duh.
And we're just gonna roll with it. So this week, this episode is a little hodgepodge, unplanned, but I think it'll be fine. There's still plenty of things to talk about, and so we'll just jump right into it.
That's right. So I have a question for you.
I'm listening.
How are your boys?
The boys are good. Let's see. Oh, so the boys are really good. We went out last night to Carolyn's house. Well, not out. We went to visit Carolyn at her house because James was going to be out late into the evening, and he said, "Oh, I'll be home at like 10 or 11." And I thought, "Whew, I can't handle this by myself all day." So I called her as soon as my last client picked up. I texted her and I was like, "Hey, can I invite myself over?" And we packed up in the car and went over. She was in pajamas. Like Friday night, mom night means pajamas on the couch, and I was totally there for it. And I just really like when we have unplanned get-togethers like that, because
those are usually the best.
They're the best, and it's such a wonderful, like, mutual distraction for the kids, because she would have been at her house, like, trying to entertain the kids, like, hoping that they entertain themselves, and I would have been doing the same thing at my house, so why not do it together? So, anyway,
awesome.
Shout out to Carolyn. I love her. So that means that the boys we're actually out pretty late last night, and they got some time with the twins, and everybody's getting a little bit older. So even though they're playing really well together, they're having all these little she called me this, or oh, she said we're not best friends, or he said we're not best friends anymore. And I was like, listen, it's a little early for all of this. Mm-hmm. Just go downstairs and play.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Children, though. What are you going to do?
I know. You love them anyway.
That's right.
They are really good. And then I just got some great news, because if you have kids, you know that everything you do for them has to be planned well in advance if you want to get anything good. So right now, New Haven is doing schools, like school choice for the school, like the public school system. And it's March, but if you want to get a spot in a good camp for the summer, you got to start now, because if you wait until it's actually hot outside, there's not going to be any spots anywhere. And if you need any kind of aid, you want to get any kind of discount or aid, it's all eaten up. So
that's right.
So that this is a reminder to any parents out there: if you're looking for something for the summer to do for your kids, you better jump on it now. Mm-hmm. Jump on it now. Put your name on a list somewhere. And I bring that up because our church does a camp, and they just called because they're running a new. They're running their camp, but they're doing a new program called the Freedom School, which has a focus on literacy, and I don't know what else. I'm going to go look it up. But they called and asked if we wanted to send the boys, and I was like, yes.
So now they're going to camp.
So now they're going to go to camp. It's all set, and I don't have to think about, I don't have to worry about a whole lot of other things. And the reason we didn't send them last year is because the timing wasn't working perfectly for us, but this year it's going to work out. So it's just a nice thing to sort of check off my my
Your
brain.
list.
Yeah, check off the list, and it makes it feel like, it keeps the train. I'm trying to think of the metaphor that I want, but what happens is if I don't plan far enough in advance, which I don't really like to do, like I have a hard time thinking out 6 months,
Yeah.
which is what James is really good at. And so what happens is I get to the time and I'm like, what are we going to do? And then it causes me a whole lot of unnecessary stress. So to know that the summer is sort of falling together and things are falling into place, and one decision helps you make another decision, helps you make the next decision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really grateful for it. So,
Well, that's good.
yeah, so it's good. And then James is good. He's wrapping up stuff with school. I think I don't know if graduation's in May or August, but it's coming up, and this is his last year. I feel like we're all graduating because I'm really, really going to be happy to have him back to us, and not the long days and the long nights and that kind of thing, because he's always, and long weekends and all of that jazz. So I think it'll be good. And even for him, I think it'll be really great because he's got a bunch of work to do, but I'm here doing the show now, so he can't do it until I get back. I think it'll be a weight lifted off of everyone. And then he's going to have a master. So yay.
That's amazing, though, because I can tell you that he's going to really appreciate all the free time he has on his hands
right
to that. And I think he's going to probably, do a good job at making up for not being able to really dedicate a lot of all his free time to the boys. And I think it's going to be great overall for everyone, especially for you.
It's going to be fantastic. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing to say about the boys is, did I tell you we signed him up for flag football?
No.
So we signed him up for flag football, and I was like, James, I don't really want to do football. I mean, I don't really want Lincoln to do football. And he said, it's just flag football. But like,
they can still get hurt.
Like tag. Well, that's what I said. And I just have this fear of being the parent of a big kid, right? Because everybody wants to take down the big kid. Mm-hmm. It's like, everybody get on that kid. And you got 6 little kids jumping on the one big kid's back.
Not realizing that all he does is look big, but he's really not that big. He's your age.
Yeah. So, but the running joke is we'll be prepared with his birth certificate in case we get any pushback on how old he is.
Well, I think that you'll probably definitely need to do that.
Yeah. So anyway, it starts next month, and that'll eat up a good chunk of our Sundays with practice and games and stuff. But it'll be an interesting new thing for our family.
So on Thursday, you had mentioned something about you trying to meet a specific amount of quota of time that you spend outdoors.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that doing this every Sunday is going to help you towards your quota.
It really is. So a couple weeks ago, we had Becca on talking about playing outside and nature play and that jazz. And then right after that, I read this article that talked about having an annual goal of 1,000 hours outside. And of course, when I saw that in the caption, I was like, how? That's a lot of hours. Like, how in the world? And it literally breaks down to about 3 hours a day. And further, I think about it as 90 minutes in the morning and 90 minutes in the afternoon. And once I saw those numbers, it started to feel a little bit more attainable.
Yeah.
So,
it certainly makes it easier because you don't have to sit there and say, oh my God, I got to be out here walking around doing
5 hours. Well, what I was thinking is we have to be outside all day in order to reach 1,000 hours for the year. But it turns out that it's just 90 minutes in the morning and 90 minutes in the afternoon. So
I'm sorry.
So anyway, in true nerd nerd fashion is what I was trying to say. I set up a little whiteboard on my fridge and I made a little chart, and I'm charting how much time we're out in the morning, how much time we're out in the evening or in the afternoon. And we've been, I think one day we reach the 3 hours, but usually it's about an hour and a half total for the day that we're able to be outside, especially given the extra sun hours in the evening. Mm-hmm. And, it's only going to get better as it gets warmer.
My favorite time of the year.
I know. So I guess the whole point of that story was thinking about being outside can feel overwhelming, especially if you don't, it's not your first choice, right?
That's true.
But if you break it down into little chunks, and even if you start with a goal of 60 minutes in the morning and maybe 60 minutes in the afternoon, or 60 minutes for the whole day, if that's all you can work, like if that's all that you can do now, it's actually kind of attainable. So get a little chart, make a little chart, set a little goal, even if it's 30 minutes, but set something and try it with the kids. I don't know.
I think
helpful, and it's helpful for
everyone.
me.
Mm-hmm.
It is helpful for me because sometimes I get wrapped up in all the things I need to do inside the house.
Yeah.
But if we're outside, I can't do any of those things. And it gives me a chance to relax and sort of breathe and enjoy the fresh air. It's good for everyone. So
awesome.
If you can, you should try it.
And keep track of it.
That's
the important part, is be consistent, because then you really know that it's working, that your efforts are actually working.
Right. And once it becomes a habit, right? However long you think it takes to make a habit, 3 weeks, 30 days, 60 days, whatever the thing is that works for you. Once it becomes a habit, then it'll be super easy. Like you won't have to track it. You won't have to track it forever. But if you start out tracking it, then it'll be good.
That's awesome.
So, I think we should move from that, because we should move on to the next thing, because the other thing that's been huge this week, actually, I don't remember when it happened, the terror attack in Christchurch, New Zealand.
I think it happened the
Sunday?
week before last. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been a couple weeks now.
Yeah, we're going on over this weekend. I think we're going to go into our second week.
Yeah. So that was a huge, I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't say anything about it, even though, the show is typically light and breezy and airy. I definitely would be remiss if we didn't mention that, 50 people, 50 Muslim people, 50 New Zealanders, 50 people were murdered in their place of worship, like where they should be safe, a couple weeks ago in New Zealand. And it was a New Zealand person who's totally been, what is the word for when you become a terrorist, when someone else, what do they call them when they're radicalized? That's the word.
But it wasn't a New Zealand person. The person was from Australia.
Oh, it's an Australian person.
It's an Australian person that
who was radicalized by us, like is a like white supremacist, like a U.S. white supremacist in Australia, harassing people or murdering people in New Zealand. Like it's
his name, the shooter's name was
We're not saying his name.
Okay.
No.
Whatever. Okay. Bye, Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. Nope. I saw a piece from the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern is her name, and she said we will not give him the fame that he thought he was going to get from this. She refuses to say his name. She told everybody, I said what I said. You're not going to say his name.
Good for her.
So literally, I don't even know his name, because all the things that I've read don't mention his name. I know you know his name.
Yeah, we'll call him Bebop MF.
We'll call him terrorist.
There you go.
Call him white supremacist terrorist. But I wanted to focus, the loss of life and those people and their families, like I can't even imagine.
This was, I believe, March 16th.
Yeah. But the like force and leadership that Prime Minister, and I love that they call her Jacinda. I don't actually, I guess we said Barack, right? President, maybe Obama. I don't know. Whatever it is, everybody's saying Prime Minister Jacinda, right?
They call her by the first name.
By her first name. And she is showing such an incredible force and strength and poise and empathy and leadership in managing this crisis.
Well, she's not even Muslim herself.
She's not.
She went to the place of worship, to several places, with her head covering on, being respectful of the religion, and she went and she prayed with them.
As she should have, right? You're the leader for everyone. Whoever is hurt, you should be able to comfort and empathize with in a way that our loser president can't manage.
My whole thing behind this is that, it is absolutely tragic, right? We've had our own share of tragedies here. I mean, when you think about
same kind of things, the church in North Carolina.
Church in North Carolina, you've got 26 individuals, 20 of which were babies.
Oh, yeah.
That, died here in Newtown, Connecticut, where we record our show. Not from Newtown, but we're in Connecticut, right in our own backyard. And when you think about, 49 people being shot at a nightclub at Club Pulse in Florida, when you think about, Aurora, Colorado, or Columbine, or you think about VTech, and you think about all these shootings that have happened, And nothing
has been done. And she's like, dude, 2 weeks max. I'm fixing this.
And
fixing it now.
Within 2 days, the entire government there made an announcement that they were moving to ban assault
rifles and large magazines or whatever.
Any type of automatic weapons that could be used to propagate such a mass shooting. And I thought, wow. And they're literally
you just mentioned Columbine. That happened when I was in high school. It's like 1999.
Like 25 years ago.
So
25 plus years ago.
That started. It wasn't the first mass shooting, but...
It was the first mass shooting in school.
Oh.
Columbine was the first time that, in my memory, that I could recall that this happened in a school of where students were studying, and then it just...
And nothing.
Skyball. And nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And you keep thinking, well, okay, so they didn't do anything there, but if it ever happened in this way, right? But recently, if 26 children, babies, first graders, kindergartners can be murdered and they're not going to do anything about it, I don't have any shred of
6 and 7 year olds
hope that
6 and 7 year olds.
Like, what could be worse than that? I don't know what could be worse than that.
They didn't even start their lives. They were in a place in where they felt
can't read, can't write.
And here's the thing too, that in Connecticut we moved to do some sort of gun reform locally at the state level, and I believe Colorado did too. So I can't say that they didn't do anything. We as a people, as Connecticut people, decided that we were going to do something, and we did pass some legislation banning certain type of assault rifles, etc. here in the state, but at a federal level that doesn't exist.
Right. No, I hear you.
The other thing that really bothers me about the whole situation is that you have organizations like the NRA that are pushing back and saying, this is a means for government to take away your right to carry. And I'm sorry, but your right to carry does not give you the right to murder 50 people all in one shot just because you decided you had a bad day today.
Yeah, you felt like it.
And
I don't even support anybody's right to carry, so I don't even care.
I am conflicted about that. Like, I'm okay with the Second Amendment. I have no gripes on the Second Amendment. If you have a right to bear arms, that's fine. But you can have a pistol. You don't need a machine gun with 90 rounds of bullets that can, massacre an entire freaking congregation. You could have a pistol and keep it at home, or a shotgun that has 2 shots and whatever. And you want. It's like, oh, but I like to go hunting with my AR-15. I'm like, how many bullets do you need to knock down a freaking buck?
Right.
You're
not a loser, are you?
Yeah. It's like, if you miss that much, you shouldn't be hunting.
Right.
If I were your friend and I were with you, I'd be worried. And then the other thing, too, is that when our Constitution was written, the Second Amendment
there were no AR-15s.
No, there were no
muskets.
They're muskets, and and most of the premise behind the basic civil rights that we have, the
militia or
it's just an army can't come to your house and say we're gonna just barricade ourselves in here because we can in times of peace, right? In times of war, you were expected to put up people that were fighting, like in, the Confederacy versus the Union, et cetera, and things like that during the Civil War. But we don't live in those times anymore.
And I don't care about any of that.
No.
Particularly because the right to bear arms or to have a gun or whatever it is not universally given to all of us.
Nope. And people are treated differently.
And we're treated differently. And so even if I had, there's so many people, Philando Castile, people who had legal, licensed firearms and were still killed because of it, were killed, shot at because of it, are still treated like criminals because of it.
I posed a question to one of my friends. We were having a conversation about gun rights and privilege. Right?
Oh, yeah.
White privilege.
Right.
And he's like, that word really bothers me because it makes me feel like just because of the color of my skin, I have an advantage on people.
And you're like, I said, where have you been? You don't.
But you do. I said, let's have an imaginary conversation and let's have an imaginary situation.
Which
let's
we don't have to. We can use lots of real world experience.
We're both in Texas, right? You're a black person. I'm a white person. We both walk into a restaurant. We both have legal rights to carry a gun. We get into an argument. As soon as the police arrives, who do you think they're going to arrest first? Mm-hmm. The black person or the white person?
You don't even have to get into an argument. The black person just walks in and they get the police called on them.
The moment you see that gun and you both have a gun, who do you think is going to get locked up first? Right. That is privilege.
Who's assumed to be the aggressor? Yeah, I don't even have time for people like that.
And so, and we were having this conversation. He had a come to Jesus moment. Oh, I get it now. It's like, okay, I'm getting it. And I'm like,
no, he didn't. He didn't get it at all. He just felt uncomfortable and wanted to stop the conversation. But I don't
that
support.
That conversation went on for 2 hours because I gave him many examples of how his privilege gets him to places where, like, other people may not. Like for example, I'll give you an example. This is not what we were talking about, but the choice of school, right? We live in Connecticut. We have Ivy League schools all over the place. If I were a white man and I said, oh, I want to go to Yale, the fact that you can, without nobody blinking an eye or batting an eye twice or paying for it is easy, right? But if you were a black person or a Latino or someone, a South Asian, etc., and you said to yourself, I want to go to Yale, you got to work that much harder to be able to
twice as far,
to
twice
even
as
think
hard
of,
for half as far.
To even think or even conceptualize the fact that you can go to that university.
Or the assumption that all the brown people will need the financial aid or will need extra support or will need blah, 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 blah.
And so
it's just a whole long list. So going back to what we were talking about,
Church.
I don't support anyone's right to carry any kind of weapons, particularly because we prove over and over and over again that we can't handle it. We can't handle it. We can't handle it, and we don't enforce it the same for everyone.
That's
so
right.
I say fuck it, and nobody should have any. I don't understand. I mean, I look in England, and you see videos of the police. I don't know what they're called there, but they all have bobbies. They're called bobbies. They're like clubs or something.
Yeah.
These guys took down some crazy guy who had a knife and was wielding a knife, and they just knocked him around a couple times with the bobby, and they were like, all right, let's go to jail now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
but
that's what I'm saying. But that's if nobody has the guns, then there's more time to have any of the conversation. You know what I mean? But if I'm not saying take the guns away from the police and leave them with the people. Yeah. I'm saying take the guns away from everybody. There's no reason for us to have militarized police officers. I was just in Grand Central, and there were police officers with what looked like AR-15s. Why is that happening in Grand Central? Why am I walking by you with my 4-year-old like 4 feet away from an AR-15 and your hand is near the trigger? Why is your hand near the trigger in Grand Central?
Welcome to America.
Like, it's just not necessary. So I guess that's what we're talking about. But I don't like it, and I wish nobody had a gun. Right? Like, we should just all give up the guns. And she said that Prime Minister Jacinda said that they're also going to do a gun buyback program so that people can sell their guns in.
Yep.
Like, all of those things work and have been proven to work all over the world.
They said that after the buyout program, they're looking at spending close to almost $2 million to buy back all the weapons that are currently registered and out there in New Zealand.
And that is well worth it to save 50 people. Like, what are we saying, that the lives of these people are not worth $2 million? These 50 people, 1 person, 10 people. I don't care. I think we should not have any of the guns. I don't need to hunt. Why do we need to hunt? Go to friggin' ShopRite. I don't need to be shooting guns in a shooting range. Why? There's no reason. Like, it's just, I don't agree. Fight me if you want to. Anyway, let's move on. So Jacinda, Prime Minister Jacinda is awesome.
And I have to give a shout out to the people of New Zealand.
Yeah.
Because those that are not even, part of the Muslim community came together beautifully and supported their brothers and sisters.
My favorite is watching, there's some like biker gang that was outside on Friday, outside of the mosque for Friday prayers. And you put that next to the friggin' biker gang that Donald Trump has when he's threatening to like bring martial law to the U.S. over a wall. Like, why is that? I can't. But yeah, the people of New Zealand are awesome.
Yeah, they are. I think that.
I mean, they have their own shit, right? Like,
oh, of course.
New Zealand didn't
we
belong
all
to the
do.
white people, but now,
It's.
I don't know how they treat their indigenous people, so.
I'm not
sure
going to
give them I'm not going to give them a full pass.
No.
Same thing with Australia.
Yeah,
they don't treat their indigenous people
Australia
great.
has been through the ringer and back. At least they're indigenous people, in regards.
So
to
it's not a blanket.
No, I just think, given the situation,
yes,
given what happened, I think that their response was appropriate.
Right.
Their response was the correct one, and I think that they're moving swiftly and not dragging this thing out like we do in this country.
Right.
You know,
we don't even drag it out. We just refuse to act.
Yeah, so. Nothing. And the idea of Congress throwing money at a buyback program, I would probably end up in a coffin first before I would ever see that in my lifetime.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, big up to New Zealand and to the government there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about, I'm away from the thing.
Yeah.
So it's Saturday, and I told you I'm on a board of a local organization called Youth Continuum.
You have mentioned this before.
Yes. So it's a board that prevents and addresses youth homelessness, focused on youth age 18 to 24, right? So anyway, we had a retreat today, and so a couple hours spent doing like a deep dive on our strategic plan and some other stuff. And then we had some of the clients, former clients, people who are still in the program, young people still in the program, come and talk about their experience and, maybe their gaps in the offerings that the organization is providing, and to get a firsthand response from someone who actually went through it, actually used it, actually uses the program, and can say, hey, these are the things that work really well. Here are some places where I wish we had XYZ. So anyway, that's where I was this morning, and it was a really interesting. So, I mean, anytime that you actually speak to clients and you're not just thinking about what you're doing or sort of patting yourself on the back or whatever, actually, when you actually talk to clients and hear about how they experience what you're giving, right? It's a very eye-opening experience, and I walked away really, really happy with what the organization is doing now, and sort of encouraged about where we can go, right?
Yeah.
One of the main things, though, that I took away is we had a couple of the young people were there talking, and something that one of the young women kept coming back to was this want and this expectation that at 20, or I don't know how old she is, maybe 21, that she should be able to have a place to, like, afford a place to live by herself, right? She's like, she faced homelessness when she was 16 or 17 or something, and sort of been managing around that. And she feels like she's not being shown a clear path to go from, homeless to be in an apartment by yourself. And we're all listening to her, and we're really trying to empathize with the overall situation, but so many of us at the table, people who are on the board, ranging from ages 30 to 60, we're like, dude, I've never lived by myself. Living by the expectation that at 20 years old you can afford an apartment by yourself is just out of this world. What are you raising your hand? You did live by yourself? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, good
at 17,
for you.
I moved out, but it wasn't easy.
You moved out at 17 and lived by yourself?
Yes.
Well, good for you. Yep. That's not a normal. I was just with 15 people, and none of them had that experience. It's
not normal, but I did at 17 years old. And I don't want to take away from the story because I know it's important, but I was working at a bar. Started working at a bar at 16. And so
you were making good money.
I was making good money, but because I was getting out at 3 o'clock in the morning and having to go to school at 7, my grandmother was like, no, this is not going to happen. You're living under my roof. Mm-hmm. You're home at 10 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to leave your job, or you're going to need to find your own place to live, and then you can make your own rules. And I looked at her and I said, can I?
Right.
Would you give me permission? And so I did. The following week, I found a place and I moved out, and that was it. And I never went back home. Never went back home.
Good for you. But that's not
everybody's story. And
that's not everybody's story. And that's not a reality.
It's not a realistic goal.
It's not a realistic goal for anyone. And I took away from that. I was like, you're always going to be disappointed if you stay. I totally think you should have dreams and goals and stuff. But this one here is crazy unrealistic, you know? And then I was thinking, what is it that we are doing as a culture, as, you know, the adults who are adulting around them? What is it that we're saying to young people where they think that that's a realistic goal? And I think it's our fault, right?
Well, first and foremost, we don't even have a focus on family nucleus anymore, right? Like when you look at Asian folks, and when you look at European folks, when you look at people from the Mediterranean, it's all about the family unit, right? Grandparents living with the parents and the children and the kids, and they're all living together.
Yeah.
We moved away from that.
I know the idea that you get to be an adult and move out, right?
So
and
I
move
can
out
understand the concept of kids growing up nowadays of thinking that it's okay to be on your own,
or
and that you
not
should
even that
be
it's
able
okay
to do
that
it.
you should be able to do it,
because that's what we perpetuate.
Yeah, I mean So Lincoln just asked me, I want to say it was yesterday. He said, "When am I a grown up? When do I get to be a grown up?" And I was about to say 18, and then I said, "When you finish college at like 22." Right? I said, then maybe you can be a grown up at 22, because I always hear people say, like, when you turn 18, you're an adult. You can get out of my house and like move on and do, if you want to do what you want to do, go and do it. You're an adult.
Until they stay in your house and then they're still doing what they want to do and you don't agree with it and they don't want to follow your rules.
Right. But 18 it's not really an adult.
It's not, but it's illegal. It's the
legal
age of consent.
It is a legal age of consent, but it's not.
But that's about it. You can legally open an account. You can sign.
But you can't go from being 17.9 to being like an adult 3 months later or whatever. So I think, and then the other piece that was hard for me is all three of the young people who came, they were all people of color, 2 Latino young women, and then 1 Black guy. And I just kept thinking, it feels really unfair because there's so, like, I know so many white people who got to stay home, right? Like, and now, just in general now, this idea that millennials aren't moving out or they're moving back home with family, right? There's what is it called?
There's a negative connotation on that.
A safety net to be able to move back home and stay at home.
But people frown upon that. Like, your peers will look at you and say, "You're going to go live back home with your mom?"
It's true, but they still do it, right? And I know lots of people who were able to stay at home until 26, 27, and then the next year buy a house, right? So maybe they're working in consulting or they're whatever. They're making a ton of money. They stay home. And then when I turn around, I'm like, I'm struggling, but my friend just bought a house. Like, how in the world did that happen? And I had to remember that I can't compare myself. Like, it's not a fair comparison. If you had a support, or if I think about people who have apartments, right, that I couldn't get or didn't have access to. You have people to co-sign on an apartment or co-sign on a house, or give you a loan so you can buy a house, or co-sign on loans so you can do whatever XYZ thing that you want to do. Like, those aren't always available to people of color, to young people of color. So it's not available to them, but I also feel like the expectation on young people of color is that as soon as you're an adult, which we've decided is 18, you better figure it out. Whether you have the safety net or the support or whatever, you better figure it out. And it's unfair, and it's
well, I also think there's another dynamic behind that as well. Like, I think that the way the state has programs set up, that a lot of minorities, take advantage of because they have to.
Let's stop that right there. Not a lot of minorities, a lot of people. A lot of people take advantage of it. State welfare benefits.
But for the minorities in this demographic, what happens is that, they say to you, "Oh, well, the way the program is structured is, once your child becomes an adult, you get no more assistance for that person.
Right.
Or they have to move out, or whatever the case may be. And so unless your child continues school, there's really no transition period to allow a child who you now perceive to be an adult to really make sure that they indeed have their shit together before they go out into the real world and become self-sufficient. And I think that these programs are set up to hinder the opportunity
I agree
for
that.
them to have a transitional period, and for parents to be able to say, oh, well, what am I going to do when my son is 18? I'm not going to get any assistance for them anymore. He needs to go get a job. He needs to go do something. He needs to go live on his own, or they're going to take my help away.
Which is kind of a circular thing, right? Like, I feel like a lot of times families push out kids sooner than they should because they can't afford to keep taking care of them, right? Like, you are old enough now, you go get a job because I'm already struggling, which goes back to job opportunities and availability and education for parents when they were younger, right? To be able to afford to make more money. And then the other thing related to the benefits, the state benefits, is that there's this idea, like the welfare queens or all these minority people of color on welfare, where number one, white people, like, there are more white people. How can it possibly be that a fewer number of people use more welfare than the majority of people? You know what I mean? Like, the math doesn't make sense. White people use state benefits, which is welfare, more than any other group of people combined, and they call it benefits and they don't call it welfare. So when white people get SNAP, it's called SNAP here in Connecticut, it's a benefit or an entitlement. When people of color get the same thing, all of a sudden it's called welfare, right?
And the way in where benefits are shifted to, like, for example, when you think about Section 8 programs like Section 8 and RAP, etc., they're pushed more towards, impoverished neighborhoods, or
because people can make a decision that they don't want to accept the Section 8 voucher. You don't have to accept it. They need to make a rule that if you are renting a place, you cannot discriminate against people because that voucher is money. But people can say, I don't want it. And they can make up some other reason for why they don't want to accept it. And so then the only place that does accept the voucher is in this area, and you get all those people
congregated in
one area, and then you don't support that area, and then you blame those people.
Yeah, and then because the area is either not as it looks run down,
right.
or it's how is it that they say it's ghetto,
right?
Because you congregate them all in places.
But it becomes that way because you don't put anything into that area.
And you don't support it,
right? And then the benefits, where this whole welfare to work, or the idea that state benefits will put you in a position to be able to afford your own place, is not real, because as soon as you start to work, they take away more than you were making, right? And so it broadens the gap. It's like, I started working and now I'm managing if I include my paycheck with the benefit. But if you take away the benefit, now I can't afford the lights anymore.
But I'm back to square one because, I'm trying to build myself, right?
I only work part-time. I can only get a part-time job. And then what one of the young ladies brought up today is that she was able to get the food stamps. They're called SNAP here, the food stamp benefit. And then she wanted to go to school. And as soon as she enrolled into the school and she was getting financial aid, the state took away her SNAP benefits because they count the financial aid as income.
But that financial aid is to pay
for school. Exactly. So the idea that this program is meant to help you is not true. It actually hurts you. And it's incentivized to make people stay on it, because as soon as you make too much money, not even too much, as soon as you make more money, they take away, even though it's not enough. And as soon as you try to better yourself by going to school, they're like,
can't
no,
even own a car because they use that as liquidable assets.
Right.
And so therefore it might put you over the income guideline to be able to qualify even for just state insurance.
Yep. Yeah, I've heard of people, you have to be living on the street. You can't even be at a friend's house or at an aunt's house or something. Yep. They want you and your kids on the street before they'll even They don't even want you living in a car.
And they might ask you for your firstborn.
Exactly.
I mean, I worked for a company, and when I first started working not under the table, right? Because when I was younger, I was working on the table. When I first started, what I would say is my real job, I didn't have health insurance. I was working, I think it was 30 hours a week, and I didn't have health insurance because I didn't have a full-time job.
Yep.
And I went to the state, and I remember I had a 1992 white four-door Honda Accord. And I walked in and I applied, and I didn't even want food stamps or anything. I just needed medical. I had no medical insurance. I got denied because I was over income by $200.
Oh my God.
I looked at that lady and I just wanted to say, "You bitch."
Right.
And walk out and say, you know, I was like, you made me miss a couple of days of work to come up in this piece.
Yeah.
And fill out all this kind of paperwork to tell me that you're denying me because of $200. You know, if that were the case, I would have just lied and said, no, I don't have a car. I can't get on a bus. But it's just, it's amazing to me.
Yeah. And then they put those buildings in places that are hard to get to.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's unfair. And I totally feel for them. And I'm on this board because I'm trying to figure out what, I'm trying to be a part of the solution, right? And I don't have the same story that she has, but everyone goes through some kind of like disadvantage or hardship. And it just reminded me that that people of color, right? Because that is what I saw. I know everybody saw young people and maybe they saw brown people, but I saw young brown people like struggling and super bright, right? They come to this thing, a room full of white people. I'm there, but it's still a room full of white people to me, to talk about their experience.
And they'll never understand it in a way that's tangible for them.
They can empathize.
They can empathize, and they're professionals.
And maybe they haven't experienced that, but they've experienced something else. And I don't want that to sound like I'm making excuses. But it's not the same, right? So when I saw it, I can see people that I know, right? I can see people in my family. I can see, like, that's what I saw. And on one hand, it like makes me cringe that our state policies and our like support systems that are supposed to be here to help us are horrendous. But then on the other hand, I'm also disappointed that we as a culture, the adults in the culture, are not being fair with the expectations that we're setting up for these young people. And if we feel like that, and if people feel like that is an unfair judgment of me, the fact is that's what they think. That's the experience of the young people. They feel like if I don't go to college, then I won't make it. And if I don't live by myself, then I haven't made it. And that comes from somewhere. So even though you think you're not saying that to kids, that's what we're saying, because that's what they're feeling.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not true.
It isn't true.
Because I can tell you countless people that I know that are successful in a trade field that has nothing to do with college. College is not for everybody.
Everyone,
And there's many opportunities out there to be had, even for people who don't go to college.
But that's the thing, is I think that the even just the conversation or the way we talk about it, we have to stop saying college is not for everyone, because it puts college people on one side and everyone else on the other side. You know what I mean? It sets up us and them situation, even in the way that we talk about it. So I feel like the whole thing needs an overhaul, because when you say, oh, you can go do trade school, it sounds like as a direct opposite of college. Oh, I mean, just go do a trade or go do a, whatever.
But even people who I didn't go to college. And I can tell you that it wasn't until I got my recent job that I was able to afford to go back to college and start getting my degree. But I've gotten pretty far in life without it.
Right.
You know, I dropped out of school when I was in 10th grade. I had to go back and get my GED. But I was working the whole time.
Yep.
You know, I always say this: if you really want it, you'll get it. You just have to be able to hustle for it. You have to be able to, like, literally fight for everything that you get, every single penny. Be smart about your money choices. Be smart about what you do with your money, and you could do it. Yeah, you know,
it's true. One of the young women, she was quoting Oprah, who says, "You can have everything, just not at the same time."
Yeah,
and I totally I totally believe that. It just made me think a lot about, because even when Lincoln asked me that question, I was like, oh, you're going to go to college, right? I don't even know how to change because that is so ingrained in me, even though I know that a plumber definitely makes more money than I do, or an electrician definitely makes more money than I do, and that there's so many other fields out there. Like, I feel like we need to get away from calling them trades, because trade, even though it's the right word, it comes with a connotation that you're going to do this because you couldn't make it in school, or because school wasn't for you, right? We need to figure out a better way to talk about things so that it doesn't set up a dichotomy, like a this or that. Either you're with this group that's going to college, or you're going to go to trade school or do an apprenticeship or whatever. Even apprenticeship is a fancy word that doesn't feel fancy. It feels like, oh, you're going to go just be a plumber. When I tell you I have a problem and I need a plumber, they don't pay me no mind, because they don't need me. They have so much work. They're making so much money. They work when they want to. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have that life.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Like, it's all these like things of what we want to be. Oh, I want to be a millionaire someday. I want to have a lot of money and have a good job. I think that for the average American who's been working more than 20 years, we've already been a millionaire one times over.
$1 million has run through your fingers.
Yes, in your lifetime. In the past 24 years, the average medium income in the U.S. is about $59,000. Oh. Right? That's the average medium income for a household in the U.S. If you were to multiply that by at least 25 years, that's $1.5 million that you would have, as you said, passed right through your hands. We've all been millionaires. We just don't know it.
Right. And account for taxes. But
well, of course. But if you were to manage your money right and save your money, I think that you could really do a lot of really good things.
And also it feels unfair, and like an unfair thing to say.
I wouldn't say save your money. Invest your money in the right things. Use your money for the right things, and I think that your money will work. Make sure that what you're investing your money in works for you.
Yeah, that takes us to, there should be financial education classes starting in middle school, right? Starting in elementary school. There should be ways that we are learning about how to manage money from an early age, because the thing that probably struck me the most that they kept saying was, I can't go to school for 4 years because it's too far out. Like, I can't. And I just said this earlier, I have a hard time thinking out that far in advance. And so people can't see that if I keep my coins together at the end of this year, I could have like $15,000, right? People can't, it's hard when you're trying to feed yourself today and tomorrow. And when you are responsible for a lot more people, right? There's some numbers about the average, family income for a family of color doesn't go as far as it does for a white family, because families of color are taking care of so many more people. Not only, I'm not going to say people of color have more kids, right? Everybody has a lot of kids. But not only kids, but you're paying for mom, you might be paying for your sister's school, you might be paying for our uncle's medical bills, you might be paying, and as soon as one person starts to do well, right? Everybody's turning to you to help them. And they expect that you help, because that's what family does. So even though we're sort of moving away from this extended family living in the same household, we're still paying for an extended family, right? When a emergency happens to your mom in another state, you still have to help pay for that. Meanwhile, you still have to pay for your own light bill. You know what I mean? So it's really unfair. They're always saying like, oh, your housing should be you should save 10% of your money, and your housing should count for like 20% of your money. I was like, who do you know whose housing is only 20% of their income?
I said to the lady,
it's more like 50 or 75.
So I filed for bankruptcy about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And part of the whole thing with bankruptcy is that you had to go through this whole money managing thing and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm on the phone with this lady, and I'm having
Trump went through that. Go ahead.
Probably not. He's white. So I'm going through the conversation with this lady, and she says to me, so how much do you spend on food for the month? And I said, well, on average, about $400. Oh, that's way too much for one person.
What?
You should be
Bitch,
spending.
you don't know how much I'm eating.
You should be spending about 20. I think it was something like $200
For the month.
For the month, and I'm like, where do you live?
Right.
Like, do you live on a farm? Do you grow most of your food? I mean, do you know how expensive it is to walk into a supermarket and be able to buy good vegetables?
Right.
Like, yeah, I could probably spend $200 a month if I was buying
milk,
stuff.
bread.
No, if I were buying stuff off the dollar menu at McDonald's and eating that crap every day, yeah, I could feed myself for $200 a month.
Although I just bought us lunch and it was $20 at Burger King.
Yeah,
so
no, and it was delicious.
It's not. It's the assumption is that if you don't know how to manage your money and if you're poor, you shouldn't be eating like a whole lot of food anyway.
Well, no,
you should have white bread and sandwich meat. You shouldn't spend any money on meat, which is the most expensive thing. You shouldn't be buying shrimp. Who do you think you are eating lobster? Don't you hear all these stories about people judging people for using their SNAP card on
I don't care
lobster?
What they think I should or should not be buying. I mean, I certainly don't think that I need to be buying like candy or anything like that. I mean, that's a different story. Use it for real food, something that's nutritious. That's my personal opinion.
You can't police what people are buying.
I am not here to tell people what they can and cannot eat. I have an opinion about it. I keep that shit to myself and I keep it moving.
Right.
But my thing is, this bitch said to me $200 for the whole month. I'm like, first of all, I don't even know what state you're in.
Right.
But that's not how we live here in Connecticut. I mean, you go and you buy 2 pieces of chicken and that's like 2 breasts and that's like $12.
No, they want you to buy rice and beans and
I'm tired of rice and beans. I grew up on that shit. Right. My thing is that the budgetary expectations that they have are not realistic in themselves.
Right.
And so when people
and it's only for us.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone.
No. And so I was like, lady, you're tripping. I was like, you must live on a farm and where, you know, you've got a father somewhere slaughtering a pig. So you having a nice little pig roast tonight that you didn't have to buy at a supermarket. But, you know, I will tell you that shit is expensive.
It is.
I was like, no, you know, it's like you buy lettuce. Like some lettuce is like almost $4 for a head of lettuce.
Right.
$4 wait.
So either you're telling
200,
me
that's 5% of your monthly allotment for just fucking lettuce. So
either you're saying that I should not be eating healthy food, like I'm spending too much money on healthy food, or you're going to tell me I'm fat and I'm not eating properly.
That's the other thing. And
so
I'm
there's
like,
no winning.
So if I'm using about $400 a month in food, so you must even start like on the other end of the line. You're probably already like this fat ass, probably sitting on his seat, and she's not lying right now. But I wasn't fat then when we were having this conversation, and so my thing is, it's like no, $200 for one person is not going to get you anywhere. And then when you apply for SNAP, all they give you is like $130 for the entire month.
For the month. Wow.
For the month. For one person.
Yeah.
And like $20 in cash.
That's insane. I remember as a kid, like, people trading, selling food stamps. At like half,
yeah.
Right? Oh my God, I remember the booklets.
The little booklets,
the little
with
Monopoly
all the
booklets,
yes.
Purple, green, pink, whatever colors they were.
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
They used to give a stack like this, right?
Yes.
And then you would have to go through. Okay, well, here's one, and you had to rip them out.
And you can always tell who has it because they've got like 2 carts full of food and no. Like, you don't think people need toilet paper or
none of that,
paper towels or pads or condoms or like you don't think people need any of those non-food items, and you get like $5. You can get $500 in food money, but no money. You can't buy toothpaste. You can't buy a toothbrush. Like, what do you think?
Get cash for that, right?
I know, but the amount of cash, it was like $20.
Well, back then it used to be more. Now it's less. Now for an adult,
I don't know what it is. I just know it was not enough.
If you're a parent with a couple of kids,
which is why we had to sell the food stamps.
Yeah, it's like you probably get like $200 or $300 worth of cash money.
Wow,
cash assistance if you have like 3 kids and you're a single parent, but not for one adult. And they're like, no, all you're getting is $20.
Wow.
I'm like, okay.
It's insane. It's insane.
It really
but
is.
It just brings me, it just makes me think about what we are doing to raise up the next generation in a way that and I obviously don't want to squash her feelings. Like I want her to think big. I want her to have big audacious goals. She is like they were all so awesome to come in and be able to speak their truth in front of strangers. You know what I mean? Like they were doing an amazing job. I just And I don't want to put barriers on their dreams and their goals, but you will always feel like you're failing if you don't have a realistic expectation about what winning looks like. You know what I mean? If I judge winning based on like my white friend, like I'm never going to feel like I'm winning because they're always going to seem to be winning better than I am.
Well, even as parents, you know, when they say it takes a village, right, to raise, you know, one child, it takes help in a group of people to be successful and win, you know, and you see that in a lot of cultures in corporate America, for example. You know, not one department is more than the other unless you're like the CEO and or you're a VP or something, but all these departments work together for the success of the company. And I think that you having a roommate, if you can't afford living on your own, is setting yourself up for success from the beginning, because then you can.
Because you don't have to struggle as hard at the beginning, and you have some coins to put together and save for later.
And save, and then, you know, you'll get to that point where now you have enough money that you can make better choices about your life.
I mean, that's what we did as families. We would live in apartments. They're like 6 families in the same apartment, you know, like cousins, aunties, uncles, like everybody living in the same house. And then as you start to do better, then one moves out, then maybe another one comes in, but you can't always like from jump be doing great, because it's like, that's not normal for everybody. For those who it is, like, awesome, good for you. But for the rest of us, the rest of the world, it doesn't always work that way. And if you think that that is, obviously it would be better if it worked well for everybody. Yeah. But if you think that that's bad to begin with, right, then you'll just always, like, I think it's a good thing. I think it's in some cases, it can be a great thing to have that sort of safety network, especially knowing as a parent now, if my sister was living next door or stayed with us for a little while, maybe not too long, but like a little while. And so then we were able to do, like, because someone would watch the kids or I would watch her kids so she can go out and do something, or she would watch my kids so I can go out and do something. Like, all of that makes life easier for everyone.
That's right.
And as you get better, then you can move out and you don't need that, like, it's called scaffolding. You don't need as much scaffolding if you've had some time. And some people get that from their family, from their parents, and some people aren't lucky to get that from their parents, and they get kicked out early, or like early at 18. Or in this case, she's actually in the LGBT community. And what we're finding is that homelessness affects the LGBT community in higher numbers, because like families who don't agree with, call it a lifestyle and they don't agree with it, they kick you out really early. And that puts them at a, not only at a disadvantage, but in danger.
That's
in
right.
a lots of ways. So,
and, that also raises the chances of youngsters committing suicide.
Yeah. Suicide, being sex trafficked, getting involved in drugs, being in like unreasonable, it's a thing I just learned about, which I guess I kind of knew about before, but I didn't know there was a name. But there's a thing where you're trading housing for sex, like that kind of thing. It's not willing, but it's not unwilling. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't do it if you didn't have to, but you feel like you have to. So I would take a roommate over that any day, right? Like,
Truth.
I wish there was a way, and I as we move on, thinking about the work of the organization and the things that we can contribute, I just hope we think of ways to mentor folks and let people know what adulting really looks like. Right? That so many of us have had 3, 4, 5 different careers before you figure out what you want to do, or have still not figured out what we want to do. And that's okay. As long as you're moving forward and trying to better yourself, then you're good. Just keep looking for people to support you and mentors to help give you access to things, right? Because a lot of the winning that's out here, you see the whole college scandal thing. A lot of the winning that's out here is people opening doors for other people. That was a weird noise.
Oh, that was
Siri.
Winning Siri going nuts.
Is finding people who can open certain doors for you will give you access to things. And we're not all lucky to have that at home. Like, we don't all get to intern at Uncle So-and-so's law firm, or, shadow Auntie So-and-so at her medical practice, or whatever.
And take advantage of any opportunity like that it opens up, and milk it for all it's worth.
Right.
If someone's willing to give you something for free,
right,
that you're going to learn something valuable from, jump on it, and don't think about that.
Yeah.
Maximize the opportunity you've been given, because not everybody's given that opportunity.
I know. So anyway, that was most of my morning today, but just made me think a lot about what is it that I'm projecting, or what is it that I'm saying, or how is it that I'm like, because it just still feels like we're pitting college against anything else, or, doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever. Like, if you're not on that path, then you're on this alternative path. And alternative is not a good word, right? Like, it doesn't inspire confidence in anyone. So how is it that we can change the language that we use around this? Because it's not enough to say, oh, we have some schools, because New Haven has some schools that are like trade schools or technical. That's the new word. And they keep coming up with new terms to use
to make them interesting, but they're all
they haven't
programs.
changed the connotation that comes with it, and they haven't changed the way that it seems like this is as an alternative to this other path that's the right path. If you can't be on the right path, then you can go to technical school. If you can't be on the right path, then you can go trade school or do an apprenticeship.
They need to look at trade school and technical schools
as
the right path for the right person.
Right, that the path includes all of these things. It's one path and all of these things are on it, as opposed to one path and then everything else on another.
On the other side.
So I don't know how people listening are feeling about this, or like what thoughts you have about, or if you did the path of college, or if you did the other path, right? And I can't get away from doing them. Like, what path did you take, and how did you
feel about it,
and how did you manage it? And especially when, in the last 30 years or so, everybody's like, oh, you got to go to college or else you're a failure. Like, how do you manage when you don't make that choice, or that choice is not available to you? How do you talk about it and still prove that you are worthy, worth it, and winning? You know what I mean? So I think it's a conversation to be continued. And I will come back the next time, the next board meeting we have, to see how, with an update, maybe not the next one, but the next couple ones, to see how it's going. But those are just the things that I was thinking about this week.
Fantastic. So do you have a hashtag Mom So Hard tip of the week?
I do. So I told you I was at Carolyn's house last night, and she goes, oh, I'm going to make some noodles. She said she's going to make some noodles for one of the twins. And then she pulled out what was a ramen packet. I was like, oh, you mean ramen? And she said, yeah, but I'm going to make noodles. And so I watched her. She took the noodles, and she took the little packages, the little seasoning things, and she threw them in the garbage. And then I watched her like pull out some shrimp from the freezer, grate some fresh garlic. She used some butter. She used some, butter, garlic, I don't remember, salt, pepper, like whatever other seasonings. And then she presented this ramen noodle that might be the most delicious thing I've had all week. Definitely the most delicious ramen I've had in a long time.
And she probably paid 20 cents for the pasta.
Yes, it was 20 cents for the ramen. She had the big box of it. But anyway, the tip that I'm giving is, don't be afraid to doctor up something that seems like simple, cheap, whatever. Because I think she and I were agreeing that we think that the bad part of ramen is the stuff that's in the little package, like all the salt and
all the MSG,
all
and
the
all
bad
craziness.
stuff, right? Even when they say there's no MSG, there's a whole lot of bad stuff in there. But if you just use the noodles as your base, and then you just like go to town, like chef it up with these noodles, it makes such a fast, such a delicious, such an easy meal. And the kids just like slurped it up, and it didn't feel like, when I give my kids ramen, I put the package in it because it didn't occur to me to do anything else.
Oh my God.
And then I feel bad because I'm like, I don't think this is the best thing for them to eat, but it's all I can come up with right now that I'm sure that they will eat. You know what I mean? And like doctoring ramen is not a new thing, because I don't want James to hear this and be like, Candace, we've been doing this a long time, because he makes fancy ramen with like sausage and spinach and eggs and all kinds of things in it. But my kids won't eat that.
Yeah.
Like they won't eat all the other stuff that we think makes it good. And so this was like keeping it super simple, but definitely flavorful and delicious. And the
olive
kids
oil and
yummed
salt
it in.
do so much for
everything.
For everything.
Yeah.
So before we go, because we do need to wrap up. Speaking of ramen noodles, you reminded me of a little meme that I saw on Facebook, and it's spaghetti that they stuck through cut pieces of hot dogs, right? And so they put a whole bunch of spaghettis in the hot dog, and then you boil it, and it looks like, you know, it gets all soft, and so it looks like a head with a little hair hanging out on the side. And the caption read, "What kind of warfare fuckery is this?" And I'm dying. When you said ramen noodles, I immediately went to that because I saw it too, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's so creative and it looks so good." But you're right. What kind of
foolishness? Yeah. It's totally foolishness. But I mean, craziness. You gotta do what you can. You gotta do what you can with what you got. So.
It literally looks like a doll head with hair hanging out the side.
Oh my god,
bald on the top.
We'll look for that and share it, because I'm having a hard time.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But anyway.
So yeah, don't be afraid to doctor up something super simple. I think that's it. I don't have anything else to share today. Follow us on Facebook. We're at the Breezy Moms Podcast. Check us out on iTunes and all the places. We're on all the places where you get your podcast. And don't be afraid to share an episode if you found it interesting and or helpful to you. I really appreciate it. Until next time, bye. This show is produced by Tom Ortiz at Digital Stream Radio. It's available for download on Podbean. Follow us at Facebook at Breezy Moms Podcast, or email us at breezymomspodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, don't stress, just breathe.